Dats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
Welcome back, Saints fans, football fans. Another rendition of Been There, Done That. And I am Mike Nabors. I'm going to bring in my cohorts, producer Justin Thomas and co-host Scott Shanle. Marques Colston is our guest this time around. The all-time leading wide receiver in Saints history. We've had the best running back in Saints history, Deuce McAllister, a few weeks ago. Now we have Marques Colston. You're going to want to stick around for this. I interviewed Marques Colston his entire Saints career. Very modest, very quiet, but that doesn't mean that he's not a good talker. Right now he's a budding entrepreneur, has a lot of things going on in the business world. He weighs in on what he's doing now, but also looks back at his Saints career, not getting drafted almost, a late 7th-round pick, not being on the Pro Bowl, talks about that, also weighs in on Michael Thomas, and also his angriest moments. So a lot to get to with Marques Colston. But Scott Shanle and Justin Thomas, I'm going to bring you in. Big news with the NFL. It's probably too little too late, but I think for Saints fans, it's cathartic that the NFL says, you know what, we had to do something about that NFC Championship game.
No question about it, Mike. I think you got to give Coach Payton and Mrs. Benson a lot of credit for kind of championing this cause. Obviously, happening directly with the Saints, they're going to do that. But it would be a shame if this happened to another team and kept them from winning a championship, going to the Super Bowl. And it doesn't fix anything as far as last season. We still don't get to watch the Saints play the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But if it can help protect the integrity of the game, as Mrs. Benson said in her letter after last season, then I'm all for it. And I don't care about slowing the game down. I care about these guys getting it right, because fans pay a lot of money to go watch their teams play, and they deserve to have the proper outcome, just like players and coaches' futures are dictated by wins and losses.
A lot of people are looking at this Saints team wondering if they're going to rebound, and we've talked about this in past podcasts, that they rebounded from the Minnesota unbelievable loss a year ago. Here's what Colin Cowherd of Fox Sports said about the future of the New Orleans Saints.
Saints are going to be a pullback team. Back-to-back years, overly emotional endings to season. Drew Brees at the end of last year, I thought physically didn't look the same. They don't really throw the ball down the field. You lose a Mark Ingram. You got a guy retire on your offensive line. I think this team is so caught up, the city, the team, the organization, on this blown call, it will affect them going into next year.
Now, Saints fans, I can see if you're upset with that, but Drew didn't play great down the stretch. I think there's a hint of truth to that. But, Scott, what's your take on that? Because I know his job as a radio host is to stir it up a little bit, and I think that was part of it. But, what do you think of those comments?
Yeah, I think obviously his job is to make some headlines. But, it depends on how far you want to look into that. Do I think the Saints are going to go 15-1? Probably not. There's going to be some letdown. There's going to be different challenges and adversities they face. There's going to be different injuries they face. But does that mean they can't go 12-4 or 11-5 and still be one of the best teams in the NFL? Absolutely not. And I think they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. It is going to be difficult to have the same run they had last year. That was kind of a lightning in the bottle season. Injuries, things like that pop up. But there may be a little bit of a pullback, but I still think it's not going to be a big enough pullback that keeps them from being one of the premier teams in the league.
Yeah, I think it's easy to have that point of view, in California, the way Colin Cowherd is. But, the bottom line is, they rebounded from the Minnesota game. They didn't have Mark Ingram the first 4 games of the year. And I like what they've done in free agency. I think they've made some good moves, especially with not much money in the cap. We're going to have Marques Colston on just a bit. Actually, we're going to have a lot of wide receivers coming up in these podcasts. We're going to have Colston this time around. We just did an interview we taped with Lance Moore as well. A lot of insight with both of those guys. But before we get to Colston, I want to bring in our producer, Justin Thomas. Justin, your beautiful wife gave you a nice Roger Goodell clown T-shirt that I know you wear with pride around the house. Guys, I was thinking Roger Goodell comes out in the NFL owners meetings and he said, I think we handled it the right way. Well, applaud you, Roger Goodell, for finally saying something. It's easy to do it now that the owners, and the coaches who really pushed this measure through. A lot of the owners thought it may be reactionary. As a guy who is an unabashed, I'm not going to say hater maybe, but not a Roger Goodell fan. What do you think of the way he kind of approached this whole thing, not only after the Super Bowl, but recently now kind of jumping on the bandwagon a little
Well, I
bit?
think he's handled it the way he should, because he realizes how bad of a look it was for his league last year to end that game the way it did. And then for him not to speak out about it, wait till the Super Bowl press conference. I mean, obviously he handles everything bad, but honestly, I think he made those comments because it's been 8 or 9 years since Bounty gave 7 years. He's tired of not getting served food in New Orleans when he goes to New Orleans. He's tired of ducking for cover, so he's got to make some comments finally.
All right, it's time. Time to bring in the undisputed best Saints wide receiver of all time. He holds all the records, the most catches in Saints history, the most touchdowns, and the most receiving yards. They call him the Quiet Storm, but he was very loud on the football field. Ladies and gentlemen, we bring in the one and only Marques Colston.
Appreciate you guys having me.
I want to ask you so many things, and I know Scott has a lot of questions for you, but I've asked you a lot of questions over the years, but your demeanor was different than most wide receivers, Marques. When you scored a touchdown, you didn't have to have Chad Johnson-like celebrations, almost a Barry Sanders-like quality to you, where you would a lot of times just give the ball to the official. Where does that come from? Did that come from the way you were raised? Was that a coach that had a heavy hand on you growing up? Where does that mindset come from?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the way I was raised. I grew up in a pretty big family, a lot of siblings. So, our parents were always, they were just really blue collar types of people. And, by the time you get to the NFL, there's a lot of the outside noise. But at the end of the day, I approached it was my job. And, really I got paid to get first downs and score touchdowns. So, I always make the joke, when you see a surgeon, successfully complete a surgery, they're not in there, spiking the scalpel. So, so to me, that was what they paid me to do, and so I approached it.
The way you came into the league, to me, kind of mirrored your style. You almost weren't drafted. You were a late 7th round pick. At that point in your career, did you think you were going to get drafted? Were you disappointed you almost didn't get drafted? I mean, what was your mindset when you came in the NFL?
It's funny, man, because, going into the draft, you hear so many different projections, and obviously coming from a small school, the spectrum's a little bit wider. Nobody really knows. But you quickly find yourself in a mode where, as the draft is winding down, you're kind of disappointed and down on yourself because, four picks to the end of the draft, I finally got a chance to hear my name. But then you kind of snap out of it and you understand the scope of what just happened. Like, you were one of 255 people in the world that got an opportunity to go prove yourself to a team, and that's really all the draft is. I mean, it's a ticket to minicamp. So initially I was disappointed, but I was able to snap out of it really quickly when I kind of understood what really just transpired.
Hey, Marques, I tell you, right now we're blowing the minds of all of our former teammates, the fact that you and I are on here talking, because we are constantly listed as the most quiet teammates they ever had. So they can't believe that after we're done playing, we're out here doing media things now. But I just want to stay on that same topic. And growing up, did you have aspirations of playing in the NFL? Was that like a childhood dream? Were you huge into sports? Because I know for me, when I was young, I wanted to play football in Nebraska. That was my dream. I grew up in Nebraska. Thought I wanted to be the next Michael Jordan, but quickly realized I was never going to make it in basketball. How did you grow up with the aspirations, or did you have any until later, or was it later in life, should I say?
No, I mean, it's always been it for me. I mean, I've been a fan of the game since I was 4. My older brothers played Pop Warner, and I was out there, in full uniform, going out to grab the tee as a 4-year-old mascot. Started playing when I was 7, back in the days when I was faster than everyone, played running back. But no, I mean, it's always been it for me. It's always been a dream to play in the NFL. And, it's just funny that the pathway that I took to get there wasn't I'll call it the most traditional, but no, I mean, this is something that's been ingrained in me for a very long time.
Yeah, I can completely relate. I mean, I played 8-man football, walked on Nebraska, and there's something rewarding about or taking the hard way to get there and grinding all the time. Did you have a most influential coach, maybe not even a coach, maybe most influential person in helping you get to where you got to and helping you fulfill that dream?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many people along the way. I spoke a little bit about my parents, and obviously they were, hugely influential in, my path and really who I am as a person. But I'll say my high school coach, Larry Nawa, he was the perfect mix that I needed. I mean, he was someone, he knew my family. He coached my older brothers. So there was a little bit of a personal connection there, but um, he held no punches. He was gonna, if you sucked that day, you were gonna know you sucked. Um, if you were really good that day, you might get a sentence or two about it. But he was somebody that kind of applied constant pressure, and made you realize potential you didn't really see in yourself. So having that kind of influence in throughout my high school years, where quite frankly, I wasn't an all world. I wasn't a world beater. I was a guy that was you know tall, skinny, uh, slow, all those different things. But he saw something in me that I didn't quite see in myself, and he always pushed me to the limit.
Marcus, I like telling the story. The first year I covered the Saints was your rookie year. Was the first year of Sean Payton, first year of Drew Brees, and it was before the first preseason game in Nashville. And we had a pre-production meeting, and Sean Payton really didn't have a good feel for his football team yet. He was breaking down the offensive line. He said, "Well, I know Jeff Fane's going to be good, but I'm not sure about all these other guys." But then he pointed to one person on the depth chart, and Tim Brando and I were in the pre-production meeting, and he said, "Watch out for this guy. He's looked good. Keep an eye on him." And it was your name. It was Marques Colston. And this was, before your first preseason game ever. What was it about that first training camp? Was it a confidence that maybe you didn't know you had in you, or was it just already there? I mean, what happened in those first couple of weeks where you were able to catch the coach's eyes?
I mean, I think I knew a couple things. I knew that I looked like complete bag of garbage in my rookie minicamp. So I knew it. I kind of felt that like I was treading on thin ice going into training camp to start with. And Scott, you remember that first year at Millsaps. I mean, it was just brutal.
Millsaps brings back, just the word brings back bad memories.
You'll get chills, right? No, but for me, it was knowing that I sucked in the spring and rookie minicamp, and knowing that I was treading on thin ice, and I had to do whatever it took, however many reps it took from vets, learning the playbook. It was just something that I knew that this was my one shot going into that training camp, and if I could survive it and I can outwork people, then I would give myself a shot.
I don't want to bring up a sore subject, but we're all in your corner on this. Not only people who covered you, but people who I think were your peers. How on earth were you never in the Pro Bowl? Does that bother you? Or is that beyond belief? I mean, how did that happen?
No, I mean, if it was a pure coaches and peer vote, then it would probably bother me a little bit more. I played the game for my peers to respect what I did. And that's really all that mattered to me. If I could look my teammates in the face and they knew I gave it everything I had, and vice versa, that's why you play the game. So, the Pro Bowl thing, there's some other things that, get people to that level. And, there's no knock on anyone that's a little bit more animated or anything like that, but it's just, if that's what it took for me to get to a Pro Bowl or two, then, the fact that I didn't make it, it's fine by me. I mean, it just, like I said, I played the game for one reason. That was for the respect of my peers.
You're calmer than me. I think it's ridiculous, but go ahead.
Well, I'm going to just follow up. I think that's the one thing where I think Mark's 100% correct. As a player, I would constantly get the question, do you feel underappreciated? Fans want someone else to play linebacker. And I gave the same answer Marcus gave. As long as I had the respect of my coaches, the general manager, my teammates, that's all that mattered to me. And Marcus, he always had the respect of all of us guys because he did it the right way. He was true to who he was. He wasn't going to be overly animated so he could make a Pro Bowl. He was just going to be Mr. Consistent. And that was the reason we all respected him. We knew what we were getting out of number 12 come game day. Sticking with a hot topic issue right now, Rob Gronkowski just retired. We as players all face that time when we know it's our time to walk away from the game for numerous reasons. Marcus, how did you know it was your time? When did you know that football was done for you and you were ready to move on?
I kind of knew it going into that 10th year, that I just physically, I wasn't the same player. And when you play the position that I played, the way I played it, I had to be able to operate it at a really high capacity. And I just felt like physically I couldn't do it anymore. So, at the same time, I think upstairs they kind of saw the writing on the wall too. And, I came into training camp and I felt pretty good, but I didn't really feel like myself. And then, the first game out, it just didn't go the way I wanted it to. And you start seeing those reps start to change a little bit. And I kind of knew that was going to be it for me. So I really had kind of a long season to really digest it and really, soak it in. So it wasn't as much of an off-season decision as much as it was, just kind of understanding how things were playing out and seeing that story before.
Yeah, I can completely relate, Marcus. I knew going into my 10th year was the last year of my contract. I knew where I was in my career. In my 30s, that spells trouble. And I knew going into that year, I was going to enjoy it, soak it all in, wherever we played, take in the game atmosphere, enjoy the locker room. And I think there's something to be said for being at peace with that decision, because you're right. The hardest thing as a player, Father Time is undefeated. And I remember going home after games and just thinking, man, 5 years ago, I could have made that play. And it wears on you mentally. But for me, I walked away from the game, no broken bones, never had a surgery. How did you walk away from the game as far as your body? I mean, how's your body holding up?
A lot more broken bones and surgeries than you. But no, it hasn't been too bad, to be honest with you. I mean, I still try to work out a little bit. I get my little executive workout going.
What does that entail?
That's everything. That's Mike. What that means is no more football lifts, no more hang cleans, no more heavy squats. That's beach patrol. Stand in front, do some biceps, things like that.
That's it. No, I make it all the time, man. Like when I first got out, I didn't know how to work out. I knew how to train, but I didn't know how to work out. So I'm learning how to work out and just get my beach body together. I came out okay, and I have my days, but I think you're spot on, man. Like when you have the ability to kind of soak in that last year and really understand the blessing that you have in front of you and really enjoy it, I think it just makes that transition a little bit easier.
I want to ask you about this young guy, Michael Thomas. So what are your impressions of him, and how amazed are you with what he's done? And hadn't had a lot of help around him either, especially last season. Yeah,
I mean, he's a joy to watch, man. I just and I tell him this every time I see him. I just enjoy the way that he plays the game. It's an intensity and a violence with him that you just don't see that a lot of young players. And he's a guy that. I think you could see it when he was at Ohio State. He had a kind of that prototypical pro body, and he just made pro plays when he was at O State. So, getting him into that system and getting him into working with Drew and Sean and Pete and those guys, you knew he was going to have a chance, but he kind of took it and he's taking it to a level that I don't think many could have predicted. So I really enjoy watching him, man, and I'm holding on to these records for dear life right now.
Yeah, Deuce got lucky with Mark Ingram, I think. He just kind of dodged the bullet on that one. But I want to talk to you about Sean Payton, Drew Brees. Really, a couple things. How is it when you go back to New Orleans and you see him, and how amazed are you that they're still, that Sean Payton's still coaching and doing well, and that Drew Brees is still playing at the level he's playing at?
Yeah, I mean, just getting back, it's always good to see those guys, man. And it's always funny to see kind of how they interact with like the new waves that keep coming in, right? So you see less and less of our guys, when you go back, but it really doesn't amaze me at all that they're able to have this kind of success at this point, just because they're just wired. They're wired in really similar ways. If they can find an edge, they're going to find it, and that's going to keep them razor sharp. And I think when you watch those two interact, they've been able to go out and find the edge and find that underdog mentality year in and year out, no matter how much success that they've had together. And I think that's what kind of keeps them operating at such a high level.
Marcus, last time I saw you, we all got together for the NFC Championship game, and I jokingly called you Mr. CNBC, which is the business TV network. I jokingly called you Mr. Businessman, but in all honesty, I know guys are extremely proud of what you've been able to accomplish off the field post-career, and I think you're a great example for guys that once it ends on the field, that doesn't mean you can't be successful in business. Just take a second and talk about what you've been doing since you've retired. I know you have a lot of different things going on in the business world. Just what are some of the things you have going on in that avenue?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been busy since football, and honestly, that's been the other part, probably the major part, and what's made the transition so smooth. I kind of started to build a portfolio when I was still playing, and it helped me walk into some opportunities that that I'm into now. I mean, we have the Main Squeeze Juice Co. That's a Louisiana-based cold pressed juice and smoothie franchise concept. That's something that 3 or 4 years ago I probably wouldn't have been in a position to really take advantage of it, but being able to transition out of football and kind of have a business acumen already has made that, an opportunity that's operational and really growing at a pretty good clip. I've also launched an education program at Columbia Business School that, really is tailored around some of the challenges and some of the pitfalls that I've kind of faced in my career transitioning into the angel investing space. And, I think for all of us collectively, the more that we can share these experiences, create dialogue with our peers around stuff outside of football, I think it just creates a community that we can learn from each other and, ultimately learn from each other's mistakes so we don't have to make them ourselves.
Marcus, I saw recently you talked about speaking to large audiences. You spoke to the University of New Orleans management classes, their team. Roman Harper had this to say about you recently and your endeavors after football and your personality after football.
Like Marques Colston now, Colston never spoke a word in the whole 8 years we were teammates. And now you look at him and doing these business ventures and he's talking to people. He doesn't go by Colston anymore. His name is Marcus. It's weird. It's all weird.
I told you.
What happened? What happened, Marques Colston? What happened to you?
Well, I mean, that's he kind of explained it, man. When I came to New Orleans, nobody. I don't think people knew I had a first name. So, no, I mean, so the running joke with he and I is when I was playing with the Saints, I was Colston. Now I'm Marcus, and that's kind of my alter ego. He talks a little bit more.
Some guys, Marcus, who didn't like talking to the media, and I'm not saying you didn't like talking to the media. Maybe you can answer this question, but some guys just don't feel comfortable talking to the media. Some guys are just modest. That's why they don't want to talk to the media. But you were always really nice about, you know what, hey, Marcus, can I get you? No, not today. And, it was a nice way to say it. Your approach to the media, how would you characterize it back in the day? Was it modesty? Was it that you didn't want to do it? How did you approach the media when you played?
I mean, it was interesting because I understood the job that you guys had, right? And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I always respected the job, and that's why even when I would decline, I would try to do it as respectfully as possible.
Yeah.
But I was never someone that kind of wanted to answer the same question over and over again. So you kind of learn in your first couple years that you can kind of manage that process a little bit more personalized than people think. And for me, it was just a matter of, we're going to get in, we're going to talk about, some of the same things, and people are going to ask duplicate questions, and, let's just kind of knock this out now. And, we'll keep it moving the rest of the week.
Well, now that I have you on our podcast, I can ask you questions maybe you've never answered before. Justin, you know what time it is, right?
Uh-oh.
I'm not going to call him Colston. I'm going to call him Marques Colston. Marques Colston, it's time for More Likely. It's 3 hypotheticals. Scott Shanley's been there for what we do on CST, and we've carried it over to our podcast. Kind of 3 hypotheticals to get to know you a little better behind the scenes on your thought process. More Likely, number 1, you're always calm and cool and collected, but we like to kind of look back in the time machine when we talk to former Saints players. What's the most upset and fired up Marques Colston ever got in a Saints uniform, More Likely?
Definitely, we were playing in Atlanta. The game was either in the fourth quarter or overtime, and I ended up I caught a ball over the middle, and I think it was William Moore punched it out. And I think there's a meme floating around the internet of me slamming my helmet, just trying to make it explode on the ground. And
what did your dad or big brother say about that?
No, well, they kind of know. They kind of know that there's this little fire inside, and it takes a lot to get to it. But when it gets there, you gotta have a switch to play in the NFL. I'll leave it at that.
Shanle, what's the most fired up that you can remember you ever getting in a Saints uniform?
Oh, without a doubt, it was 2006. We played Philadelphia, and I was making a check in a zone defense we were running, and Joe Vitt didn't think I was making the check, so he was getting on me on the sideline, and I was ticked, and I went out the next series and had like 3 straight tackles, and I remember Joe telling me in meetings, Joe Vitt, linebackers coach, telling me in meetings, he's like, all I need to do is get you mad, and I can get a Pro Bowl linebacker out of you. I remember it was maybe week 6 of the first season we were all together in 2006. That was probably the most mad I've ever been. And it wasn't due to anybody on the field. It was my own position coach ticking me off.
Wow, interesting. All right, More Likely number 2, Marques. When you look at the wide receiver position, it's kind of a 2-part question. I'm going to take Michael Thomas off the table because we talked about him. Is there a young receiver that you really respect and admire? And was there a guy growing up that you really kind of patterned your game or you were a big fan
of? Young receiver, Saints or anyone?
Just how about anybody besides Michael Thomas, because we kind of talked about him.
I mean, I really like what Traquan Smith brings to the table. I think he's somebody that he's kind of got those hybrid traits you're looking for. He's obviously a big receiver, and I think he understands how to use his body, but he's fast enough to take the top off of the defense too. And that's just kind of a rare combination that you see in guys like a Julio Jones. But hopefully he can come into camp year 2 with a really good rookie season under his belt and kind of take it to the next level.
Shanle, any wide receiver besides Michael Thomas that you either grew up liking or that you like in today's game?
Well, growing up, I was all about the 49ers, so Jerry Rice was the guy. But I thought I was going to be a quarterback. I thought I was the next Joe Montana until my junior high coach said, dude, you can't throw. How about you go back to running back? So I didn't play any of my positions until I actually got to college when I played linebacker. Wide receivers now in today's game, I tell you what, there are a lot of guys that interest me. I think Odell's a good player. He's not as consistent as I like to watch in terms of like DeAndre Hopkins and Julio, guys like that every week are going to get the defense's best guy, and they have to cover over the top because those guys do it consistently week in and week out.
Yeah, I'm still amazed. It makes me feel old, Marcus. So I covered Keyshawn Johnson for years in Tampa, and he had a great career.
Mhm.
But, Michael Thomas is one 1,000-yard receiving year shy of having as many 1,000-yard receiving years as Keyshawn Johnson. I mean, it just shows you what he's done so far in the NFL. Okay, the last one, I'm kind of changing this one a little bit. I think it's going to hopefully make it easier for you. I've been asking everybody this question, but we got Fred McAfee for the answer so many times, I have to amend it. I asked a lot of people, if you took a cross-country drive, like if you pulled out of your driveway in New Jersey and had to drive to San Diego, what former Saints teammate or personality would you have riding shotgun? We got McAfee over and over and over again. So I'm taking him off the table. I'm going to give you three options, Marcus. You dropped your kids off. You say goodbye to the wife. You got to drive to San Diego, maybe throw some balls with Drew Brees. You're pulling out of your driveway. Who's riding shotgun? Lance Moore, Robert Meacham, or Devery Henderson?
Oh, man. The only one I'm going to get a real conversation out of is Lance. But I'll do you one better. I would probably bring CJ, Curtis Johnson, with me.
Oh, wow. I think he wouldn't talk too much, but you'd have great conversations, and he's always in a good mood too, isn't he? Except sometimes on the practice field.
Yeah. you don't
just ask Meacham his rookie year, right?
Oh yeah. See, you don't want to piss CJ off on the practice field. He gonna work you to death, man.
All right, we're gonna have to amend this question, Shanle, but I think I love all the answers. Marcus, before we let you go, I like when you speak to young people. I've read some things that you've said is that, everybody concentrates on your highlights of your career, but you say the setbacks that you've had, the adversity you've had to overcome, that's what's made you successful in maybe the biggest ways, right?
Yeah. And, honestly, I think a lot of it is like Scott and I mentioned before, the journey. When you kind of have an untraditional journey to where we got to, I think it changed your perspective a little bit, and just being able to enter the league with that perspective and then leave and be able to still apply those lessons in the business world, have been, a lot of it's just come full circle to me, and the ability to kind of share those insights and understand that they apply in every facet of life. That's just part of that's just part of the fun and having a platform and being able to speak to folks about it.
Well, listen, your Dynasty Innovation, other things you're doing, advisory boards, talking to students, it's really inspiring. And, it's great to see the work that you're doing. I know you're very busy, but I appreciate your time very much.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks, Marcus. Appreciate it.
All right, Scott.
Boy, Marques Colston, it's amazing. You think you know these guys. And I always respected the fact that Marques Colston, the way he would say, I don't want to talk, it was always respectful. But boy, what an example of how to move on past your football career. He's doing a lot of great things, not only for his business, but helping a lot of young entrepreneurs moving forward. Well, you know what? We had more likely. Now it's time for a little lanyap from all three of us. All right, Justin Thomas, what do you have for the lanyap this week?
So over the weekend, my wife and I watched the documentary Free Solo. Have y'all seen this or heard about this?
I think my girlfriend told me about this. What is this again?
Okay, so it won the Oscar for Best Documentary this year, and it's about the free solo climber Alex Honnold, I guess.
Yes, I've heard this is awesome, yeah.
Oh, it's probably it's got to be the most amazing physical or athletic achievement by a single individual. It documents him climbing up El Capitan, the face side of the mountain. It's over 3,000 feet without a rope, a harness, any kind of safety attachment. Essentially, if he makes one mistake, he falls to his death. And I mean, beyond the fact that it's crazy to think that someone would put their life in that situation, it's just amazing the mental fortitude, the athletic, ability to do something like that and to pull it off. Anyway, I recommend anyone watch it. It's it's amazing, and I'll probably be thinking about it for a long time.
And it shows perseverance more than anything, doesn't it? I mean, that's kind of the theme.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a dream of his since he was young, and it took years for him to pull this off. He would go and practice different techniques and routes with ropes, and then he just decided, when he felt like he was ready to do it. I mean, it follows his whole journey throughout the whole thing, how it affects people in his life, even the camera crew, they all knew him, so it was hard for them to even do something like that, knowing that he could die. The whole thing's amazing. I recommend anyone watch it.
Sounds interesting.
I think Shanle could do that.
No. I don't even attempt that.
What you got?
I'm gonna stick with sports. The easy thing is well, I have a couple. First thing quickly, my March Madness bracket is not going too well. We do a household family bracket.
Oh, really?
My 8-year-old daughter picked Buffalo and Houston in the championship, and my boys got quite a chuckle out of that. So Buffalo's already out, but hopefully her Houston team can get in there so she can get the last laugh.
Nice.
But my layup, I'm going to go with Rob Gronkowski's retirement. And there's been a lot of talk. I think people get a little bit prisoner of the moment when things like this happen, when great players, and he is a phenomenal player, retire. And the debate is Rob Gronkowski the greatest tight end of all time? And I think you kind of lose perspective of just how many different great tight ends there's been in the NFL, and they all have different traits. And if you're talking about Gronkowski being the greatest traditional tight end ever, I think you can make that case because he was an inline blocker. He was a big guy, could go out and catch. He could play the true tight end position. But when you look at guys like Tony Gonzalez, what Tony did for the game and the quarterbacks he played with, he never played with Tom Brady. I think it's hard to argue against Rob Gronkowski being a better tight end than Tony Gonzalez, the greatest of all time, I'm saying.
It's funny. We don't rehearse the lanyap because I was going to pick Gronkowski, but I go last. So you know what? I'm the loser who goes last, so I got to change it. Exactly. But here's the thing.
Still give us your lanyap. Maybe you differ from me, and then find something else. Maybe we'll let you double up the lanyap this week.
Okay, because I was going to call an audible there. But here's my thing on Gronkowski. I was amazed that even though I'm not sure he's going to retire, I still think that window is there. I could see him going back at some point. I'm not going to definitively say that guy's done. But he's only 29 years old. The amazing stat that I heard, Shanle, you talk about the lineage of great tight ends in NFL history. Kellen Winslow, the great Kellen Winslow, not the junior, the great one, he played as many years as Gronkowski, and he's a Hall of Famer. Think of all the great numbers he put up for Air Coryell. I thought that was fascinating because, to me, we are prisoner of the moment. Sometimes we think, well, Gronkowski had so much left. But my thing on Gronkowski, and I know you appreciate this, you don't have many tight ends who like to block anymore and are that extra offensive lineman who do it for the running game and the passing game. I mean, that's a big reason he got banged up. And to me, he brings so much to the package. I know Tony Gonzalez has better numbers, and I think part of being the best is you guys stay healthy. I get that too. But Gronkowski, I saw a stat. He had the most touchdowns per game of any tight end in NFL history. He had the most in one season. But to me, the fact that he did all the dirty things, I don't know if you're going to find many guys like that moving forward in the league, especially the way the offenses are now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to ask a guy who has had as much success as he did receiving the ball, and that's the fun part, that's the glory part, to not complain about being an inline blocker and going in there and blocking all pro defensive ends, I think that's what separated him. I think he enjoyed that part of the job. But just the longevity part, he couldn't stick it out because when you look at a man that big, the only way to tackle him is to tackle him low, and eventually that wears on you.
Good point. You know what? I heard a funny story about Tom Curran, who's covered the Patriots for years. Dan Patrick asked him his favorite Gronk story, and he said it was in the Super Bowl this year, and he was like in the shower with his pads on, and he was just standing there taking a shower, like getting in the shower, and he said, "Hey," and he looked at his thigh, and his thigh was like twice the size of what it should be, and he told Curran, he goes, "Hey, come in here. Hey, touch my thigh." And Curran was like, "I don't know what to do." So he kind of poked at it, and he's like, "Does that hurt?" He said, "Yeah, just another day, basically." But you know what? That's why I like Gronk, because A, he could take the punishment for the most part, and B, you know what? I love his personality, and he was able to have that personality and that kind of environment with Bill Belichick. So it'll be two interesting things to see with him moving forward. A, will he come back? And B, what will he do entertainment-wise? Because in this day and age of reality TV and social media and YouTube, man, that is just a layup for Rob Gronkowski. But my last lanyap, because I got to come to the table with something different. You mentioned March Madness, guys. That UCF Duke game was a heartbreaker for the Knights. Let's put our objective hats on. What was worse, losing the NFC Championship game on that no call, or losing the game when that ball fluttered around the rim like 3 times against Duke?
Well, if you're asking me to look at it as without Saints goggles on, I'm gonna say, well, you know what? I don't care. Even if I wasn't a Saints fan, I'm a football fan more than a basketball fan. To not go to the Super Bowl, I mean, it's unbelievable, and it's hard to fathom. But both were bad. But I still say the Saints were robbed. What is this, day 66, something like that?
Not that you're counting.
Yeah.
What about you, Justin? Which is worse?
I haven't seen the game, but I saw what happened. I agree with Shanle. I think the way the Saints lost is worse because it was essentially out of their hands. I don't know. I guess the Saints.
All right, I'm not going to be a prisoner of the moment. It was the Saints. It was for the Super Bowl. It was crunch time. The Saints earned that win. I don't want to hear this. They could have won in overtime. The guy could have missed field goals. It was the Saints. And, yeah, I feel for UCF because they're the eternal bridesmaid, whether it's football or basketball. Well, listen, that wraps up another Been There, Done That podcast. If you want to check us out, we're on Stitcher, we're on Podbean, we're on iTunes, we're on Google Play. We're getting more subscribers every week. We're getting more listeners every week. We really appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter. We kind of give you clips of our posts, and we'll give you sneak preview, and we'll have Saints news and all that. We really appreciate Marques Colston. He really picks his spots when it comes to being on platforms like this, and we really appreciate his time. We had him on for almost a half hour. For Scott Shanle, for Justin Thomas, I'm Mike Nabors. We will see you next time.